though radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Gone. All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Well, Yaron and Nikos show, and that we do every week. A little bit off today. We're on Saturday instead of Sunday, but I think we'll manage. Hey, Nikos, how are you?
Well, of all the preps I've done for any show, this was the least pleasant, and actually I should ask for a raise for doing unpleasant work. I'll give you two examples how I spent my week. One is having to go through endless discussion between JD Vance and Joe Rogan on the difference between demons, ghosts, and aliens. Did you know that a demon is different from a ghost, but aliens could be demons and ghosts? So they spent something like 5 minutes, and JD Vance used the term, there's a conceptual difference between a demon and a ghost. So this is how...
Conceptual difference.
A conceptual difference, that's how he put it. A conceptual difference between a demon and a ghost. So this is how my week went.
It's not just a difference in measurement. It's a completely, measurement of mission, guys. Measurement of mission. How we form concepts.
And the other thing I had to go through to prep for today, except for reading a whole book by JD Vance. Did you see that creepy part in the Joe Rogan interview where he's discussing Joe Biden eating an ice cream? And he said, JD Vance said that Biden was eating ice cream in a very sexually suggestive way. And I swear to God, I haven't heard anyone since I was in high school criticizing how someone eats an ice cream and how it can be sexually suggestive. I felt I was 15 years old again and we were back at high school.
And this is, 80-something-year-old Biden who can barely, wow. I mean, no, I missed that. I started watching the demon stuff. I saw a little bit of that. And I've heard JD Vance talk about demons before, where he was doing an interview and somebody asked him about UFOs. And JD Vance said something like, I haven't really looked into it. I should. I'm vice president. I have access to the files. So I should really look into it. But I don't really think UFOs, aliens. I'm pretty sure they're demons.
Yes, that was his line.
How can they be both demons and so aliens can also be ghosts?
Yes, but apparently no, because a ghost is different from a demon, although a ghost can be a demon. But you have to ask JD Vance that. I didn't
ghost
actually
can be a demon? It. Now I'm interested. I'm going to have to find that section in Joe Rogan because that's mind-blowing.
This is, by the way, this comes from the guy who in his first book, which I really liked it, Hilly Billy Elegy, said that it's a shame that we live in a country that so many people believe crazy things, such as the fact that then President Obama was not a real American. A conspiracy theory which which was amplified by JD Vance's boss.
Yeah, and it's striking because JD Vance at some point was very critical of Donald Trump, and criticized Donald Trump. He might have even called Donald Trump a Nazi, but he was very, very critical of Donald Trump, and then flipped very quickly when Donald Trump won and JD Vance wanted to get into the Senate. It's also what's interesting about JD Vance, and is he's not an idiot. Right, this is a guy who bootstrapped himself out of, the really horrible poverty, and in the Appalachian Mountains in a horrible situation. He went to Harvard or Yale? I can't remember.
He went first to Ohio State University. First of all, he was a Marine. He served in Iraq, then Ohio State, and then Yale. And after Yale, he worked in impressive type of lines of businesses. He worked for Peter Thiel. He was part of investing firms.
Yep.
So his life resume is absolutely impressive. Especially for someone who comes from this background. So for people who don't know, comes from a completely broken family, mother having issues with abuse, with drugs. He didn't have a paternal figure in his life. There was rotation of fathers, and his number one person of influence in his life was his grandmother. So he explains all this in his first book, Hilly Billy Elegy, which is what put him at the center of the public discussion.
And Hillbilly Eulogy has, I mean, the conclusion of it is really that people need to take more personal responsibility.
Exactly.
And the problem with the people in the Appalachian Mountains and the reason they stay so poor is not because they're victims of something, but because they have not taken it upon themselves. They've not taken the kind of responsibility and improved themselves, which he did, of course, as a young man.
The way he puts it is, for your life's problems, it's not the government, it's not the Chinese, and it's not the big business. The number one person who can take ownership of your problems is you. That's what he's and as a consequence, your problems cannot have political solutions. That was his main line in 2016. Fast forward a few years later, he switches this and he says, actually, the number one reason we have all these broken communities and all these problems are political choices that we made. And number one political choice we made is to deify the market and to have as our new religion, the market. But more on that, that's what we're going to describe today.
So let's talk a little bit about why this is relevant, right? Why we're talking about JD Vance. He is vice president, and as such, he is the presumptive Republican nominee for president in 2028. Now, Trump is not very popular, and neither is Vance, it seems. But within Republicans, it's still true that Vance is the most popular potential candidate for president. So there is some likelihood that it will be JD Vance on the Republican side. You might say now that, oh, well, if that's the case, nobody's going to vote for him, and he will for sure lose. But the reality is that it depends who the Democrats put up. I mean, for all we know, the Democratic candidate will be this Ahmed El Sayed or something, the new senatorial candidate in Michigan. But it could be AOC. It could be who knows whom the Democrats will actually put up against JD Vance. And I know a lot of people who hate JD Vance, but then will say to me, yeah, but he's the less of two evils, right? And so he could very well be the next president of the United States. I don't know how to put a probability on it. It's probably less than 50%, but it's probably not much less than 50%. And there's still hope that Republicans would choose somebody else. But I always hoped Republicans would choose somebody other than Trump, and that never happened. So my hoping, unsurprising given the metaphysics and epistemology, my hoping doesn't have any impact on who actually gets elected.
And here's a plot twist. Don't be surprised if many people from the left will actually vote for JD Vance, because you will see that his economic agenda is maybe even slightly to the left of people like Elizabeth Warren. And I'm particularly 100% serious about that. This is not something, a hot take. As we will see today, his anti-capitalism, his very conscious and open anti-capitalism, puts him somewhere there. He's a Catholic Bernie bro. And people right now will think, come on, that's crazy. You will see, we're going to read you particular parts from his book. And if you pay attention, you will see that more and more openly, he wants to put himself into that niche, that I'm a Catholic Bernie.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly those economic policies, as we'll see, that make him consistent with that. He has co-sponsored bills when he was for a short time in the Senate with Elizabeth Warren. He is a leftist when it comes to economic policy, and he combines that with a ardent Catholicism and a real belief in the fact that we should not separate church and state. And I'm sure we're going to get to that and talk about that. Okay, so let's So here's a guy who's going to be president, or maybe going to be president. Even if he's not president, he's going to have a huge impact on the Republican Party. Much of the Republican Party is going to probably coalesce around him. Even if he loses, maybe they'll look for some other candidate who they think can represent them better. But the National Conservative, the Christian Conservative, and now the Tucker Carlson Conservative, because Tucker Carlson came out with a 10-point plan for a new political party. But I think that at the end, Tucker will now run. He'll fold his movement behind JD Vance.
100%. And this week it was reported that Trump, and it was reported by Fox News, that Trump has almost officially told people, hey, we have to help JD be the next president. That's what Fox reported.
Yep. And so we'll see. On the other hand, JD Vance has also failed regarding Iran, and so who knows what his public standing it will be in when will the campaign start? A year and a half. The campaign will start at the end of 2027, and really in the fourth quarter of 2027. So less than a year and a half, a year and a quarter. It'll start. Yep.
In one sentence, what is the most important thing with this guy who is worth of a whole deep dive? That as opposed to Trump, Vance is someone who is absolutely guided by an ideology. And he actually told us what ideology is. He wrote a whole book about it. And JD Vance views the world through the prism of the social teachings of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
And he plans to rule according to such teachings. And again, in case anyone missed it, he wrote a whole book where he says that this is how he views the world and this is how he wants to rule.
And I think there's a lot of people out there, and maybe we'll get to this, but there's a lot of people out there who think he's just a power luster. He's just saying all this stuff because he thinks he'll adjust. He changes his mind all the time. And it's just about power. And I don't think that's true. I think he changes his mind. That's true. But he's changed his mind now towards an ideology that there's a good chance he sticks with it. That is, yes, he was a Protestant. He then became an atheist. We'll talk about that. Now he's a Catholic. But I really think he's becoming more and more intellectual as a Catholic and bringing his ideas in line with his Catholicism. And that's the social teaching. It's the foreign policy focused on, quote, peace. It's, but it's also his admiration for Patrick Deneen and some of the other neoliberal, or post-liberal Catholic intellectuals. So I think this is who he really is. He's a politician, so yes, he'll lie and manipulate. But overall, I think these are the real ideas, the ideas reflected in this book.
And one last thing, so that we preempt some of our friends from being perplexed. They could say, come on, he's not the first nor the last politician who is religious. Only 2-3 weeks ago, we're discussing Jimmy Carter and the evangelical movement.
Yep.
But the difference is that people like Carter, they explicitly told you that my faith is a personal matter. My faith is not going to be a guiding handbook of how I will govern. JD Vance openly, and when the time comes, I'll read you the exact quote. He openly says, I will be guided by Jesus' teaching on everything, not just on issues of who I'm going to marry or these things. Jesus is for everything. Yep.
No, he is. If he ever gets elected, he'll be the first one. I mean, because we've had a Catholic as president, John F. Kennedy. But again, F. Kennedy was very clear. My personal beliefs separate than how I'm going to govern. There's a separation between state and church. And JD Vance explicitly does not believe there's a separation, shouldn't be a separation, doesn't believe the founders really intended for a separation, and he doesn't intend to govern assuming there's a separation. So absolutely, he is there. All right, so let's maybe talk about this transition that he went through, because when he's at Yale, he is, by his own admission, an atheist, and even goes through an Ayn Rand period. where he thinks he's going through an Ayn Rand period. By everything I've read about him talking about Ayn Rand, he never understood her, and he never really understood what she was talking about. But it doesn't last very long, and he is, particularly given his relationship with Peter Thiel, he is oriented in a different direction. So maybe you can elaborate on what happens.
Okay, let's see the whole arc. So
Yep.
he's raised on a Protestant background. Again, the most important person in his life is his grandmother, who was a Protestant. At some point, because again, we're talking about a clever guy, he notices that religion, Christianity, or at least Protestant Christianity, hasn't got much to say about your life, things that are important in one's life. So he brings the example of a case that I don't remember, a very tragic case. There was a woman who was in life support. And there was all this discussion in the early 2000s whether you should pull the plug and take her off life support because this woman...
Florida. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And his point was, okay, this is a tragic case, but how is this a guide to anyone's life? So he draws the conclusion that religion is some rules and some dogma that doesn't actually apply to life, which interestingly, maybe he was onto something.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
leaves more and more behind the Protestant religion, and he doesn't feel a personal connection with God. He tries to pray, but like nothing comes out of this. When he comes back from the Marines, from his deployment in Iraq, by the way, while he's in Iraq, he also questions the US foreign policy. Good reasons to do that. But he does so in a way that it makes him also question the American sense of life or the American way of life. And interestingly, this comes from discussions with Iraqis, with natives. They tell him, oh, you have this stupid music, Britney Spears or R&B, this is stupid. And then he thinks, oh, is this what America is about these days? So he has all these thoughts. So he goes back to the United States. He studies at esteemed universities. And his premise is, clever people are not religious. And this is why meeting Peter Thiel was so crucial for him. Not just because, or at least that's how he describes it in his latest book, Communion. Not because Thiel later hires him, but because here is someone who is clever, who is successful, and who is religious. So now this stereotype, all the religious people are stupid, this stereotype doesn't apply anymore.
Yep. Yeah, and Peter Thiel, for those of you who don't know, Peter Thiel is one of the founders of PayPal, and he actually got the board of directors of PayPal to fire Elon Musk from the CEO position and replace Elon Musk with himself. And but then was smart enough when he started his own venture capital fund, Founders Fund, to invest in SpaceX, out of which he just generated a massive return. Peter Thiel is also the first money into Facebook. He wrote the first check for Facebook, $500,000. I can't even, I can't remember what the return on that investment is, but it's some massive multiple, 500,000 turned into like $1 billion or something like that. So Peter Thiel's a super smart guy, Stanford graduate, and very eclectic, all over the place, but you have to say an original thinker, but very eclectic, combines an interest in Ayn Rand. He's Peter Thiel's very much, during some years, a big fan of Atlas Shrugged. Even a foundhead has wanted to make both into movies and tried and hired script writers and all kinds of stuff. But a Catholic, a believing Christian Catholic, but also gay and very, and he was outed as gay at some point and actually sued the publication that outed him and managed to destroy it. He destroyed Gawker, I think it was Gawker, was the name of the publication. Anyway, Peter Thiel's an incredibly interesting guy, but very committed to a particular interpretation of the Catholic religion. And maybe that's where you want to go next, because I think that's who he introduces this interpretation to JD Vance.
Yes, so through Peter Thiel, he comes across René Girard, who is a very serious, prominent Catholic thinker in France. And
Well,
also,
he
we
was
have
at
to...
Stanford. He taught
Sorry?
at Stanford. He taught at Stanford.
Taught at-
That's how Peter Thiel actually took classes from René Girard
Oh, okay, okay.
at Stanford University. That's how they, and I think he spent his final years, decades at Stanford.
We're going to have a special episode, by the way, on integralism and on Christian nationalism. So we're going to get back to Girard. Now, this is the same approximately time where he has a second important encounter, actually more important, with the woman who would become his wife, USA. And for the first time in his life, he feels that life is going well, that there is no imminent doom and imminent chaos, which was the environment that he grew up in. And this makes him think life a bit more. So he finds himself in a reappreciation situation of life. He's appalled by the sallowness of the elites in these institutions, by what we would understand as second-handedness, people caring about their credentials and all that stuff. And he realizes that he has to join again church. But now the question is, which church? Particularly when he has a kid, he thinks, I need to raise a boy of virtue. But how do I do this? Only religion can give you this framework of virtue and this framework of meaning. And he thinks, which is the religion which is more established, more serious? Because he said, I would go to a Protestant church or an evangelical church and I would see charismatic pastors who were mostly showmen, with the lights and the fireworks and all the smokes and all that stuff. And then he said we would move town and then there would be a different church. This is what attracts him in Catholicism. The order, the fact that it's old, the fact that you can follow the lineage of, I think, 226 popes, and that it's always everywhere the same. Whether you go to church in Ohio or you go to church in Poland, it is part of the same tradition, it is part of the same lineage. And this is what attracts him to Catholicism.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a sense of what's unique about Girard's view of Catholicism? That, I mean, I think there is some stuff, and he has this mimetic idea. And
yeah, that's the interesting thing. Whenever JD Vance quotes this thinker, mostly he talks about his sociological insights. And this idea that because we live in a culture devoid of meaning, the way we operate is by mimicking others, by all of us being second-handers. And this is I never understood why this is so unique or so deep.
I had Peter Keating, So,
by the way, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that what J.D. Vance thinks about Ayn Rand is that Ayn Rand makes you want to chase credentials and chase the top. So it's as if Peter Keating comes out of the pages of the Fountainhead and then they ask him, what do you think Atlas Shrugged is about? And he says, oh, I think it's about second-handedness. And this is the problem with Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is too much focused on second-handedness.
But that's a really interesting observation, because that suggests, and maybe this is the attraction to Girard, is that J.D. Vance is that way, that he is fundamentally a second-handed, and that Girard explains that to him, right? Girard, in a sense, gives him, this is the way human beings behave. This is the way humanity advances. But he strikes me as very second-handed. He's latching on always to other people's ideas. He's latching on, and credentials matter to him. He went to Yale. He didn't stay at Ohio State. He went to Yale, and he ran for the Senate. Now he's vice president. He wants to be president. He hangs out with Benin, and he speaks. He mimics the ideas that are presented by these other people. So,
but then why does all the time he talk about the perils of second-handedness? That's the things that I can't put together.
But and yet I think that's exactly what he is. So he sees it when it's in the material realm. And that's most of the perils that he sees in second-handedness, is chasing money, chasing fame, chasing success in some material sense. It's not. He's a second-handed in a much deeper way, in a spiritual sense.
Mm. But again, it's the interesting thing in the book, because also the second book is very well written. You experience from the front row all these battles that go in his mind. So, for example, at some point he says, I would go back to my community. First of all, he's very loyal to kin, and he calls it kin. So he's a tribalist. He goes back to the community and he feels guilt that now he has made it. So he says at some point, he told off his sister, with whom he was very close, why she gives her kids cereal every day. And she tells her, they're very sugary. You know, we have medicine these days tell you cereals are not good. And the sister is mostly like, piss off, now you're a hot shot and you can tell us what to do. Yeah. And JD Vance feels guilt. He says, oh, you're right. Who am I? Why did I come to the Appalachian Mountains or wherever she is? Who am I now to tell you how to feed your kids? So he feels guilt that he has left his community. He feels guilt that he's at the same time he's proud, but also he feels this sense of betrayal that I've left the hillbillies behind, and I'm always going to be a hillbilly, and I always one of them.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting psychology. I don't know, and it's interesting that he doesn't want to tell his sister what to do, right? So he regrets that. He feels guilty about that, but he wants to run all of our lives. Right. So
that's 100%. That's 100% truth. And I think if you ask me, religion is not doing him much well. I mean, he says that his life was completely transformed, but I'll give you two examples before we get to his policies and all that stuff. When he has his first boy, he talks to his wife about where he should go at the university before he's even born.
Yeah.
And then he says, wait a minute. Aren't we just perpetuating this inequality and this elitism? Like, imagine what poison egalitarianism and altruism has fed you, that you are making plans for the most important thing in your life, and you feel this zero-sum game, but that means that there's going to be one less position in Yale about the poor kid or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And the other occasion where you see that poison, he gives he talks, I think it's the Diary of CEO podcast, and he says this line that I hate, and I think Peikoff had the whole podcast on it. He says, I'm no better or worse than anyone else. And I think it just says, I'm no better than anyone else.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you started as a hillbilly, you have achieved all these things in your life. You have a wife that you love and you consider is the most important thing you've achieved. And still you think you're no better than anyone else. Like, seriously, you are no better than Attila the Hun. You're not better than Saddam Hussein.
Or the hillbillies you left behind in Appalachia.
He cannot put himself saying, I'm better than these people.
Well,
so
that's why he couldn't really understand Ayn Rand. And he again, there's a certain second-handedness there. There's an altruism there. And he's being torn about all of that. I'm curious how he deals with the fact that his wife, in the book, his wife's not Christian. At some point, he made the statement publicly that he would like her to convert, but there's no indication that she has any interest in converting, that she is obviously brown-skinned, and that the Republican Party seems to hate Indians, and particularly his followers, in the Republican Party hate people from India. How does he deal with that at all?
The worst degenerates are actually calling him a race traitor, and degenerates with an audience of millions.
Yeah.
Well, the way he dances around it, he says she's supportive of his conversion. She actually told him that I think Catholicism is good for you, and she joins him in mass. She joins him when he goes to church. She comes with him. So that's as far as he will go in the book in discussing that aspect. But I mean, he has pedestalized her so much that I think it wouldn't make sense for him to. First of all, Catholics
don't divorce.
Don't divorce. Yeah, it's. But no, I think the one thing that looks very healthy in his life is his marriage. So I hope it stays as it is. But again, for the worst parts of the right, which is now a group that is expanding, sees a problem, sees a liability.
Yeah, definitely, and it's going to be a problem when he runs. All right, so where do we go from here? So he so he's influenced by Peter Thiel, René Girard. He likes Catholicism because of its continuity, and I think it's rigor. It's a rigorous religion.
100%. I've many times thought if I would ever be Christian, my starting point would be Catholicism because it looks the most intellectually serious, for a lack of a better term. Rigor is the proper way to put it.
Yep.
Part of Christianity. I would never be attracted to all this. Oh, I'm just spiritual. No, either you believe or you don't believe. Anyway,
you want to be part of the speaking in tongues.
What's that?
Speaking in tongues.
What is that?
All right, so you have to look this up, Nikos. The Protestants who speak in tongues. I can't remember what they're called. Maybe somebody in the chat will tell me what they're called. But these are people who believe at some point, the Spirit enters into them, and they start speaking in some bizarre, completely, you can't understand a word, language, the language of the spirits, and it's called speaking in tongues. And they get completely possessed, and they go freaky, and it's a major Protestant, movement that.
Oh, it only happens to Protestants, not Catholics.
No. There's the Catholics. I'm sure Catholics have their own.
Well, Catholics would probably call you a demon or an alien, if I judge from JD Vance.
We call me a demon or an alien, or maybe a ghost.
Or maybe a ghost.
Yeah.
But to finish with the biographical.
I like being a demon. I want the powers of a demon.
Well, again, you should watch that stuff. It's fascinating because this guy is going to be the next president. And this guy is talking again for 10 minutes about the conceptual difference between a ghost and a demon.
Yeah.
But,
it's Pentecostals. Look up the Pentecostals.
Pentecostals, yeah.
Pentecostals, yeah.
Now, let's finish with the biographical stuff. In 2016, he releases the book Hillbilly Elegy. I remember back then I was in libertarian circles, a newbie in all that. So I remember him also being featured in libertarian podcasts, interestingly, because again, his message was this message of personal overcoming, of empowering yourself, and you don't need the government. Interestingly, the podcast that catapults him to fame is a podcast by someone who later they would share also the same religious views, Rod Dreher.
Yep.
He's the one who is his breakout moment.
Rod Dreher, just for is kind of a right wing. He's not a Catholic. He's an Orthodox. He actually converted to Orthodox Christianity. He a few years ago, he moved to Budapest. He lives in Hungary, was basically working at a think tank funded completely by Viktor Orbán. He became a huge advocate for Viktor Orbán, and to this day is a good friend of JD Vance. I think there was an article by Dero about all the crazy right-wing young people, the anti-Semitism and everything. And he was hanging out with JD Vance, not just a few months ago at JD Vance's home.
Lately he has some good takes on the craziness on the right, and
critical of the far right, yes.
Critical of the far right, and I think the reason he got alienated from the Catholic Church were the scandals and the child abuse.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
More on that when we talk about integralism and all that. Anyway, so he becomes a public intellectual. He says in the book that being a public intellectual pays very well. he should give us also the handbook of how this happens. So, for example, on the night of the election, he is on Prime TV giving his verdict, and now he presents it as, I liked the people who liked Trump, but I believed the mainstream journalists and the experts who told me that Trump was dangerous. But then he sees that Trump actually is not that bad. In 2022, he runs for the Senate in Ohio. 2024, he becomes, I think, the youngest vice president, and he's in Trump's ticket. And the rest is history. The rest people know.
And it's important to know 2022, when he ran in Ohio, he was bankrolled by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel funded his entire campaign, poured a lot of money into that particular election. Peter Thiel had two candidates, one JD Vance and the other, whose name I don't remember, but was in Arizona. The guy in Arizona lost, JD Vance won, and they were both Thiel candidates.
And I think Vance started as an underdog in that campaign. I don't remember exactly the
very much so. That's right.
The odds. So this is it. This is it. His biography. And now, if you want, we can get more in his particular views, so that we talk mostly about his economics, because again, it's impressive what's going to come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, let's start really let's talk about his views on economics, and the extent and the way in which religion inspires them, or his Catholic religion inspires him.
So we have to start from the religious part, because if we don't understand this, we won't understand anything. I'll just read a small passage from his book, because I think it's the most telling part of the whole book. He says, "We confine Christianity to the most private of questions, relations between husbands and wives, reproductive decisions. And then we're surprised when kids like me grow up in the faith and then discard the faith." So basically he's telling, if we confine Christianity to our everyday lives, Christianity is weak. Christianity is timid.
Which is the way the Enlightenment viewed Christianity, and the way arguably the founding fathers viewed Christianity. Christianity is what you do at home. And the whole achievement of the Enlightenment, or one of the big achievements of the Enlightenment, is the relegation of religion to the home and away from the public sphere, away from science and away from politics. So
here's how he evaluates what you just said.
Yeah.
We have to do better.
Yeah.
If Christianity is true, it must be true for the whole human person at all times of life. To quote the famous theologian Abraham Kuyper, "There is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, 'Mine.'" So everything belongs to the Christ. And he repeats this theme throughout the book, that in all aspects of your life, the solution to everything, from racism to the epidemic of loneliness, to sexual frustration, to everything, the solution is Christianity. And the state should stop pretending that it hasn't got a say on these things, because then the result is what we see. He keeps using this phrase, something like judge them by their fruits.
Yep.
So judge the culture by what it has produced. It has produced opioid epidemics, loneliness. We don't have children anymore. Therefore, reject the culture that gave us this result and go back to embracing the culture that gave us this country, that gave us Europe, which is Christianity.
Yes, which is a misdiagnosis of history, because the culture that gave us this country and it gave us modern Europe is the culture of the Enlightenment, exactly that culture that relegated Christianity to the home and away from politics, because the culture that actually embraces Christianity in every part of the world, in every part of life, was the culture that gave us the 30-Year War, which is, and what the Enlightenment was rebelling against, the mass slaughter in the name of Jesus.
And it's very interesting that he never mentioned these times. So he says, look what Christianity has given us. He talks, for example, about a trip he went, and there's a nice castle in Wales. And he says, this is what Christianity gave us. Nothing about the wars, nothing about the stagnation. Yesterday, you were talking about civilizations going backwards, going extinct, and then we have to reinvent ourselves. Isn't this something that what happened at some point in the Middle Ages? He doesn't even pose the question, because I know some historian will say, no, this is not what happened, but there's zero curiosity about that. It's just everything that is nice. Here's a nice castle. That was Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would associate castles with Christianity. Castles exist
Beauty.
for Christianity.
Beauty.
What's that?
Beauty.
Beauty. Yeah, I mean, Christianity adopts beauty for political reasons. It adopts beauty when beauty is deemed necessary to establish its power, which is really at the beginning of the Renaissance. The beauty has started to be creating around the church, and the church embraces beauty as a way to attract people to it and to keep them there. But yeah, I know people think cathedrals are the most beautiful thing in the world. The Gothic cathedrals are the pinnacle of human creation and you know, of human creation is beautiful, which is bizarre to me.
Well, I'll confess something. I lived in New York for 3 years. There was not a single time when I crossed York Cathedral with the Richard the Lionheart statue that I didn't pause for a moment and say, wow. So, but yeah, I'm not an expert, but there was ambition, there was grandeur. So there was something there. There was something there.
Yeah, I mean, the willingness to sacrifice the lives of hundreds of peasants for the glorification of a make-believe, you know, gremlin who doesn't exist, right? And it's an expression of power. If you go to Egypt and you look at the pyramids, wow. But it's a mausoleum for the glorification of a dead pharaoh. And the cathedrals are the same thing. They're like pyramids, but you know, in a sense worse. But anyway.
And I'm not the criterion for good architecture, because I also like Stalinist architecture and the Palace of the People in Romania. So
yeah.
Ask me about football. Don't ask me about
and the Barbican in London. So
don't ask me about architecture. But let's concretize a bit. We said that JD Vance believes that religion should have the say on everyday things in politics. Let's give an example. Actually, he gives the example.
Yep.
He says, notice how we've stopped going to church on Sunday. But how can you go to church on Sunday if you have to work on that day? Or if you are tempted to go to the mall? So maybe we should nudge people, encourage people not to work on Sunday. And the next obvious step is maybe we should ban work on Sunday. There should be a decree on whether you should work on Sunday. Or he says, imagine how many people need to stand up from the table on Thanksgiving because they have to go to work. He says a healthy society should recognize that it is gross for a 16-year-old to go to a 12-hour shift on Thanksgiving. And I thought, I was doing shifts when I was a PhD student at the most ungodly hours on the most ungodly days. And thank God I did it. Thank God that there was no JD Vance to tell me it's gross for you. No, it's not gross for me. It would be gross for me not to get the extra money that I got in these days. But you see, he knows better. And actually not he, the Bible, the Christian creed knows better. And based on that, we should decide things like when the shops should actually be open and when the shops should be closed.
And there is a long American tradition of doing that. So when I lived in Boston in the 1970s, it was illegal to open a store on Sunday. All the stores were closed on Sunday. And some grocery stores stayed open because they made more business than the fine, right? So it was profitable for them to stay open on a Sunday and pay the fine. But they were fined. It was illegal. So I can't remember the name of the laws.
Sunday trade laws, they were called in the UK.
Yeah, but
And of course, in every socialist shithole, it's the same. In Greece, it's like that. Of course, all the cafes are open, so apparently there's no sin for these people. But anyway, but you could say, okay, this is very specific. Okay, Sunday trade laws.
This is the principle. Yeah.
But let's see how this applies to his worldview on economics. So whether you read the book or you watch his interviews, JD Vance heavily quotes Pope Leo VIII. This was a pope from the late 19th century. And his Rerum Novarum encyclical. Rerum Novarum means new things. So the pope released an encyclical about new things in the late 19th century. Of course, these new things were capitalism.
Yes.
And this reads like the program of a social democratic party. It calls for fair wages, protection of workers' rights, and a reconciliation between labor and capital. The Pope says we are not, of course, communists. And you know, it's the most hilarious moment is in an interview, JD Vance says, obviously we're not Marxist. Like he has to make the clarification, we're not Marxist. Because he says Marxism and the Catholic Church have a lot of theological divisions. That's the problem. But anyway, and this Pope has the idea that we need to find a way to reconcile labor and capital through them sitting on the same table, and labor unions could play a role. Of course, this is what later becomes the third position. This is how fascists view themselves, as reconciling labor and capital. And JD Vance put it, or the Pope, I don't remember, and JD Vance quotes him, something like, no man has the right to deny another man of a living wage. Notice how simplistic and clueless this view is. No man has the right to deny another man a living wage.
Yes.
As if the capitalist, it is his duty. So jobs grow on trees, and then you go and take a job, and the capitalist now, he given you the job, and now he has also have a duty to pay you a wage which is good for you and your family. And then JD Vance does a little historical overview. Of course, he praises FDR's New Deal. He praises the role of the church in making the New Deal digestible and attractive to people. And the reason he likes this Pope and the encyclical of the Pope is he says this shatters the myth of individual responsibility, that each one is responsible for his own life. And he said the Pope recognized that there needs to be a political framework so that people are nudged to make the right choice. So the capitalist needs to be nudged, which means forced, at the end of the day, to understand that he has a duty, a Christian duty to the worker. Again, I think there's a name for this. The name is social democracy. JD Vance and the Pope have discovered social democracy, and they think they've found something very profound.
Well, but yes, I think that's right. But guided by and excused by, Christian moral principles. And so he constantly says, look, I'm not a socialist. But if you continue along this path of capitalism, you will get socialism, because the working class will rebel, and they'll give you socialism. So what we need to do, which, by the way, is the same argument every fascist has always made, right? What we need to do in order to prevent the rise of socialism is you need to give me power, and I need to control the markets. I need to preempt socialism with socialism or with fascism, if you want to call it something different. But he constantly, in every interview I've seen, particularly recently, the last few, since the book came out, he makes this argument. Look, the reason socialism is on the rise, the democratic socialists in America are being so successful in elections, is because the people are rebelling against capitalism. We, as a political party, can't represent capitalism because the people are rebelling against it. We have to answer to their concerns about capitalism. And the only way to do that is to be socialist without being socialist. And really what he means is being socialist without what really pisses off the right. The right doesn't care about economics. What really makes the right upset is, trans people in Christopher Nolan's movie, or a Black Helen of Troy. That really pisses them off, right? That they get super upset about. They couldn't care less about free markets or capitalism or economics or anything like that. So to prevent woke, which is associated with socialism, we need socialism, but with a Catholic veneer or Catholic, oversight.
Actually, Vance takes it a step further. He wants to go straight to the socialism. He doesn't even care about fighting woke. He actually says that the problem with the Republican Party is that all these years they tricked us. They tricked us into selling us conservative culture wars, whereas what they wanted was to cut taxes. And he said the average Republican doesn't even want to cut the taxes of big corporations. So he goes straight to the point. The point is straight the socialist economics.
And he's right? Because all Republicans have ever done since Reagan, the only thing that differentiated them from Democrats is they want to cut taxes. And that's it. And there's, people say, look how Trump is great. He cut taxes. Every single Republican except George Bush Sr. has cut taxes. So there's nothing unique about Trump. It's the only thing that differentiates economically Republicans and Democrats really in any fundamental sense in terms of actual governing policy. So he's right that the Republicans have failed because that's the only thing they focused on. And it's not that important.
And also, while the more he goes in his economic policy, you realize that the guy is actually clueless, which is weird for someone with this education. So I wonder if he's clueless or he's just lying. So he says, for example, that, and these are the words that he's using, I'm not exaggerating them. He says that the robber barons of the Industrial Revolution raised inequality so much that this is what brought communism and therefore then fascism.
Yes.
The guy has the arguments of a leftist, but actually the argument of a clueless leftist.
Yep.
And he's using all the time leftist talking points, and actually leftist talking points from the early 2000s. He brings, for example, he wants to talk about against outsourcing to China, and he says, workers in China was jumping from the roofs of the Apple factories in China, and this is why they had to install suicide nets. Or he has this other point that England and the US became the success stories of capitalism. Why, you think? Because of trade unions. These are not just leftist points. These are strong, old left socialist points, that it was trade unions that made these countries what they are. And a theme across his work is that stronger unions are needed, stronger labor unions. And he says one of the problems of immigration is that it weakens the cohesion of the labor movement. Again, this is an old leftist argument from the 50s.
Bernie Sanders argument. Bernie Sanders has made this argument. That's why Bernie Sanders has said explicitly he's not for open immigration because it weakens the unions.
It weakens the unions, yeah. So he has this big idea to create this forum where labor and business takes the decisions together. And there's a name for this. The name for this is corporatism, and it was actually the economic model of fascism. And JD Vance takes it out of the closet of history a century later, and he thinks that he has discovered something. But I want to read one quote verbatim so that, because, people might think we have Trump or Vance deranged and problem. So I'm going to read a very short quote, and I want our audience to think. If I told you that this quote came, forget Bernie Sanders, if I told you this quote came from Hassan Piker, which is a quote that, as you'll see, could easily come from Piker, how would you judge it? Quote, "We're going to wake up and realize that rich people have gotten way richer, the average person has stagnated, And people really hate relative poverty. Pause quote, relative poverty is when it's not that I'm poor, but someone has way more than I am, so now I'm envious. Continuing the quote. You can give people iPhones and the creature comforts of a 21st century economy. But if you make rich people way richer, you're going to have significant problems. Pause. Notice, by the way, if you make rich people richer, this is how this guy understands production. Someone somewhere makes rich people richer. And finishing the quote, the idea that we're going to allow these companies, he talks about big business, big tech, to accumulate trillions and trillions of wealth, and then we'll be able to successfully redistribute it to workers, I'm very skeptical of that. So he's not going to allow.
Yep.
And the problem if these people get too rich is then it's difficult to redistribute. So we need to find better redistribution models which are not going to be first let them be rich and then redistribute, because then you're going to have relative poverty. Again, I grew up with these arguments. These are socialist, hardcore socialist talking points.
Yes, and they're hardcore fascist talking points, and I think that's where he's coming from. That is, this is the new right. This is the kind of the fascist right. They, maybe they're not yet quite authoritarian like the fascists. Maybe they're not quite yet as racist as fascists, although some of them are getting there. But in the name of stopping the left, they completely adopt the left, and he has what makes him more committed, I think, is the fact that his views are coming from religion. That is, he is embracing Christian egalitarianism. And that is what is really motivating him, to really commit to this. So it's not just he's playing. I'm actually curious, and I don't know how to. I need to ask Peter Thiel at some point this question, because I don't think Peter believes any of that, right? I don't think Peter believes in it, but I think Peter believes that you have to say it because the average person believes in it today, right? But Peter's a self-made man. I mean, he founded PayPal. He's got one of the most successful venture capital funds ever. He's got a hedge fund. He's an incredibly successful, and he knows. He's read Atlas Shrugged. He studied Atlas Shrugged. He knows the economics. I don't think he would ever talk quite this way, but what Peter, I think, would say is, if we don't get the working class on our side, socialism wins and they kill us. So we need to get the working class on our side. We need to play the socialist card. So the question is JD Vance doing that? Or does he really believe it? Now, I think he really believes it, because I think he's bought into the integralist worldview in a way that Peter Thiel has not.
It's interesting. Our friend, our common Italian friend Luca, was asking me on Twitter, how can Peter Thiel support that crap? And I said, I have no clue, but I told him, I promised him I would ask you. So, but you've already answered it.
I think he believes it's necessary for survival. I think if we don't, and this is why I supported Trump, if we don't cater to the worst elements in our society, they will rise up against us and kill us all. So, or bring a socialism, woke socialism. So his view is you gotta pander to them in order to buy us time. I think that's Thiel's view. But
do you remember?
Next time I see Peter Thiel, I'll ask him.
Do you remember that scene in Atlas Shrugged where after Reardon's court speech, he's in that party with other businessmen and all are telling him, oh, why did you go that far? Now they're gonna think that we're just after money. And he tells them, hey, but aren't we after money? He says, yeah, but you shouldn't tell it because then they're gonna come after us. And he says, so if you, I'm butchering it, but he says something like, so if you tell them that your money is not yours, then you think they're going to leave you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He leaves the party by saying something like, gentlemen, I'm really sorry, I'll have to save your goddamn neck while I'm saving mine, or something like that. Do you remember that scene?
Yes. Yes. No,
That's exactly, I think, what's happening here.
yes, I think so too.
And it's so sad because yesterday in your show, you were talking about Nolan, the director,
Yep.
who has the same view that I have to cater to the lowest common denominator. How sad that these great spirits are broken and
Yep.
are defeated.
Yep. I think that's absolutely right. But this is the cost you pay for losing the intellectual battle, right? So these great spirits in production, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and people like that, who do they turn to for intellectual inspiration? Well, Peter Thiel turns to Girard. He's exposed to Rand, but he can never really embrace Rand. She's too radical, and he doesn't want to lose the world, the culture. He views Rand as, if he embraces Rand, he's lost kind of the world. So yes, I mean, this is what happens when businessmen don't have the intellectual ammunition provided to them by the intellectuals. It's our job.
It is. Anyway, so to finish, he has also this absolute caricature view. People can find, I quote him on my last tweets on that, where everyone, the mainstream is a neoliberal, libertarian market worshippers. Yes. And he says, whenever you spend time caring for your elder parents, this takes time from work, from GDP, and the powers to be don't like that. And he has this stupid idea that there is this, it's like either the economy or your values, economy or life. And it's like the one or the other. And he says, we want people over spreadsheets. Again, these are arguments of a first year, not particularly bright sociology student. Yep. And this is where I start thinking, he can't believe these things. He can't be that stupid. He's probably pandering. He's probably appeasing the lowest common denominator, but the lowest common denominator of the other side, the lowest common denominator of the left.
It turns out that the lowest common denominator of both sides is the same person. Or the same people. I mean, that would explain him pandering, would explain Peter Thiel. Because Peter Thiel is not going to pander, right? He's not a panderer. But he would support pandering as a survival strategy. I could see him saying, okay, JD, go pander. Here's the millions, go pander, because we need you to pander, because we need to appease these people so that they don't come after us. They don't slit our throats. And that's, I think, Peter Thiel's kind of thinking. Whether Vance really believes it, I think he has to. I think ultimately he is a believer. I think you see that in his relationship with Deneen and the integralists. He's truly a fan of Deneen's. He's read Deneen. He has praised Deneen. He repeatedly goes on these at these conferences, the National Conservative conferences, and talks about these kind of issues, and he talks about it in a way that sounds very authentic. I think he is a Christian conservative. He very much believes in Christianity and applying Christianity to the world. I think from Thiel's perspective, as the puppet master, if you will, Thiel thinks he needs people like JD Vance out there, but I don't think JD Vance is doing the pandering. I think it's Thiel pandering through JD Vance.
Right.
JD Vance is a believer. JD Vance is a believer.
You mentioned Deneen, by the way. When we're going to talk about him, the guy's literally quoting Karl Marx, and he's using Marxian categories. He's using the Marxian category of alienation. Not as a coincidence, he's actually telling you, Marx was right on alienation. I'm going to use the Marxian category of alienation. Two things before we end, or if you want, we leave them for if someone brings them up. I want to say something about the character of JD Vance and some red flags that I've seen. And the other about Israel. Do you want to cover any of these two?
Yeah, let's do both. Let's start with Israel and leave the character to the end.
Okay, so with Israel, okay. So do you remember that part where he talks to Joe Rogan about the Epstein files?
Yes, and the Mossad.
Of course. So yeah, it could be the Mossad, it could be CIA. It's these powerful First of all, he has this thing that whenever someone was asking him something about Israel and Israel's influence, he would do this thing, he would sigh, he would be like, and he had this expression like, I know all these secrets, but how much can I reveal to you plebs without the CIA assassinating me on my way out or something like that? So, he would do, I don't trust Israel. It's an ally, but we have many allies. And, we have to work with countries. Countries have their goods and their bads. Israel has good and bad. Russia has goods and bads, And then he will say, oh, that was the most insidious one. He says, unfortunately, we live in days where many are anti-Semites and others are pro-Israel, but I'm a moderate. Now, notice when you put these things together, right? Like, well, I'm not to the anti-Semitic extreme. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
It's all this is like very insidious poison dripping. Or in the book, maybe that's true actually, I don't know, you will tell me. Is it true that Charlie Kirk at the end of his life was worrying that Israel is having too much influence on the United States?
I mean,
like, have we got him on record saying these things?
There's some evidence of that in emails or chats that I've seen. I don't think there's any public statement that he made that suggests that.
Okay, because obviously he finishes his book, obviously with the tragedy with Charlie Kirk, they were friends. But he highlights this, that Charlie Kirk at the end of his life was actually warning us that Israel is having too much influx. Also, it's very funny, actually not funny, it's tragic, but listen him talking about Iran. He has these views that, look, Iran is a civilizational state. They will never accept to be a rogue state like Libya. And therefore, we will cut a deal. And he says there has been misunderstandings. There's been animosity. Like, we hate them, they hate us. It's all a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So again, he's too clever. He's clearly insidiously throwing this poison. Yeah, it's the same with maybe it was Mossad. I'm not saying it was Mossad, but that's how Mossad rolls. So who can ever know?
Yeah, I mean, I that's right. And this is from a guy who used to be a huge Israel fan, right? So when he ran originally, when the Republican Party was all on the side of Israel, before Tucker Carlson became as anti-Semitic as he's become, JD Vance was very pro-Israel. And he slowly moved away from that. He slowly, taken this, he was just on a Hugh Hewitt show, which is a kind of a right-wing talk show host, but who's very pro-Israel. And he said, look, Israel's a great country. I love many Israelis. But, just because we have shared values doesn't mean we have identical interests. They have their interest. We have our interest, and then we shouldn't confuse that, right? But it really is. It's horrific. And I think we should also talk about his views on Ukraine, right? Because I think that has shaped to a large degree, I think, Trump's views on Ukraine and his hostility to Zelensky. But it was JD Vance who really baited Zelensky last, that time, what is it, a year and a half ago, when Trump got very angry with Zelensky. I mean, JD Vance really baited him. He really set him up. He said in an interview years ago, right? I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other. Ukraine's challenge is not the GOP's, it's math. So he's convinced that Russia is going to win. And he has this, I don't know where it comes from. He says, what makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy, which is a weird.
You can say the same thing about Oman, about Qatar, about Pakistan.
Chamberlain. Yes.
So, okay, about Ukraine, in the book, he uses half a line on how Russia should never have attacked Ukraine, and then pages upon pages explaining his view. Now, he does it in a way that if you didn't know anything else about this guy, it would make sense. He says, we don't have enough ammunition to give them, basically. And you've explained in your shows many times what are the problems why the United States do not have enough or the stockpiles that they should have. But he goes on and on and on and on about that. And at the end of the day, his final conclusion is that NATO is not as powerful as it used to be because NATO started as a Christian alliance by people with Christian values. And he brings Eisenhower and he brings Konrad Adenauer, Christians who were openly Christian with a Christian message. So in the book, he downplays Ukraine. I think this is because many of his predictions were not proven right. And he said, well, I'm not going to say much about the war. It has had its ups and downs. So it's a topic that actually, now that you mentioned it, I'm surprised how little there is about Ukraine in his book.
Does he say much about China in the book?
Almost zero, almost absolute. It's interesting. Actually, it's interesting if I'll control left right now. That's why my picture is not going to be good. There's very few mentions of China. Yeah, very few mentions of China.
What about, okay, so one other issue. How does he view immigration?
Okay. This is the most interesting thing because you see here how altruism is unlivable morality.
Yep.
So he mentions time and again that altruism gives you very difficult, puts you in front of difficult choices. So he says at some point, look, I can accept that I owe immigrants, even illegal immigrants, duties of charity.
Yep.
That I have a duty of them. But also he says we live in this world of limited resources. And I have duties to also my family, my community, my country. So who is going to be the recipient of my altruism? This is a difficult decision, he says. He says, if I'm too generous to illegal immigrants, then I'm taking something away from other people to whom I owe stuff. So he cannot perceive the immigrant as someone who is going to benefit you. It's always the framework of altruism that you are going to benefit him. So that's one of his problems. Obviously, he has the cultural erosion problem, and he has also the economic problem that they erode the unions, and the unions are not very powerful. So he talks a lot about immigration, but mostly he brings it as a good example of how things are ambiguous. And he says, because he's been criticized a lot by the Vatican, not by random priests. He's particularly under Vatican's previous administration, but I think also it's current. And he says, I accept that. That's the job of the Vatican to push back, and we have an interesting discussion. That's how he throws the ball out of the field.
I think he advocates for this idea, which some Catholics believe, that your altruistic responsibilities get weaker as the person gets further away from you. So your primary responsibility is for your family, and then your community, and then your nation, and then people in other nations. Yes, you have an altruistic responsibility to them, but it's much weaker than the altruistic responsibility you have to the people closer to you. So if you have to choose who to sacrifice to, you have to sacrifice to the people close to you, not to the people far away from you.
It's interesting that they put selfishness back from the window, because this implies that your family is a bigger value to you.
Yep.
But JD Vance is very eager to tell us that, Ayn Rand does not understand that your love to your family is selfless. Well, if it's selfless, then throw your family away and go help someone from Ethiopia if it's really selfless.
Yeah, he's completely delusional. But so many people who read Ayn Rand are. So, character. Tell us about your evaluation of his character.
I've noticed two red flags. And this is serious. It's not like the ghost discussion. I think there are serious red flags.
Oh, the ghost discussion is a pretty big red flag, I have to say.
Okay, that's an epistemological red flag. But these are more... Yeah, anyway, you get the point.
Yeah.
So in the Joe Rogan discussion, they bring up this MMA fighter who, when the UFC took place in the White House, he was shouting, Michelle Obama is a man. And he do you know the what I'm talking about.
That's fine. Okay. Yeah.
And JD Vance was completely unwilling to condemn that.
Really.
He said something like, come on, guys, this is per-clutching. You're making too much of it. It was a joke. Okay, it was not a great joke, but, I found this so distasteful.
Yep.
That you are a host in the White House and someone comes there and they offend a previous host. Where are your manners? Where is you talk in the book all the time about character. Is this how you show your character? That someone, a guest in your house, is so blatantly offending a previous host, and
Yep.
all you have to say is, come on, it was a joke. So this shows me something. Again, he's appeasing the worst type of people. And by the way, if you find it a joke and funny that Michelle Obama is a man, you have the IQ of, I don't know, of a pumpkin seed. In Greece, we say we have the IQ of a broccoli.
But you also see this when some Republicans attacked his wife for being Indian and called her names, right? They called them racial slurs. He kind of half, joked it off, right? He didn't make a big deal out of it, right? I mean, his wife's being offended, right? You think he'd stand up for her honor and do something about it? And no, he kind of, again, brushed it aside. Oh, it's not a big deal, kind of attitude.
Well, that was, I remember it now that you said, yes. So that was the one thing. The other thing that for me was a red flag. He's openly in our face lying about Trump. He said it twice, and I remember it very well because I used it in an Ocon talk. He said he's never met someone as good as Trump in reading people characters. And I think, wait a minute, you're talking about the guy who has had a fallout with 95% of the people he's ever worked with.
Yep.
How can you read the character well and have a fallout with anyone you work with? This is a guy who the Iranians are playing with him. And he's the best he's ever seen in reading people. And the other thing, which is probably BS, is that he claims that Trump is very intelligent, but also he reads a lot. Trump reads a lot. Like when you see Trump and knowing what you know about his attention span, do you see a person who probably reads a lot? Have you ever heard him mention, I don't know, a book or something?
Well, we know he doesn't read a lot. I mean, people coming out of the White House have said that he won't even read a 3-page memo. They have to get everything on a 1 page in big font. He doesn't read. He doesn't read even for his job, never mind for general education or for enjoyment. He's not a reader. So
I have a rule, though, for people. If someone lies to me about one thing, then I'm very suspicious about anything else that he says. So here is JD Vance bullshitting us to appease his boss. And this is a very low character trait.
yes, no, I think that's absolutely right. And we can, but we should. I want to return to demons for a second. I mean, we can make fun of demons and ghosts and aliens and stuff, but at the end of the day, somebody who really believes this, and he keeps repeating it, so there's no reason to think that he doesn't believe it. And there's not a lot of upside to talking about demons and ghosts and aliens. A lot, right? I mean, maybe some people are going to vote for you because you believe in demons, but I don't think it's a big constituency. Somebody who's that mystical, what else does he believe in? Well, I mean, he believes the Iranians are these pleasant people there's just a misunderstanding with them. This is the fate of mystics, right? They have no connection to reality. They're not and that is a very, very dangerous thing. And so he's not connected to reality. He believes in demons, and he's a real practicing Catholic, and he's not stupid. And if you combine all that, I think it makes him one of those dangerous people to potentially be president of the United States in all of human history. I mean, what if the demon whispers to him, God's commands, could he be in a position where he's doing stuff because demons are telling him to?
And it's so interesting that I come up from an extended family which is very religious. It had been decades since I've ever heard the term demon in an actual sentence. And I've heard it in 2 years by the two most prominent people in the new right today. Tucker Carlson, JD Vance.
Yep. Yep.
They both seriously talk about demons. So,
and now Joe Rogan, who is a popularizer of all this stuff. I think he believes it too. He didn't push back, right? Did Joe Rogan push back?
I think he was more the voice of reason in that discussion, but Joe Rogan claimed they were actually aliens or maybe humans from the future. I take this every day of the week over they are demons.
True. True, but they're all nuts. I mean, these people are just insane. All right. That kind of covers JD Vance. Thanks, Nikos, reminding all of you out there that Nikos actually went through reading JD Vance's book. So,
and it was also expensive, 18 euros on Kindle.
Oh, that is expensive.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because usually kind of new books that are bestsellers are usually cheaper than that. So, greedy JD Vance. So he's greedy of everything else. All right. So we're going to turn to Super Chat. So I remind you all that this is a way to support the work that Nikos and I do. We're going to split the proceeds equally. I think Nikos will be very happy with the amount that came in today. Although there's work associated with it, so we'll get to that in a minute. But let's see. So, but keep on contributing, right? You've got to make up for it last week, which was not a very good week. So keep on contributing, and you can do stickers. Some of you have. Let me thank the sticker people. Let's see. We got normative Randroid. Thank you. Exit, Roland, and Bonnie, and whoops, somebody else there. Let's see. There were more of you. I know. Where are you hiding? There's Greg, and there's Stephen Hopper. Thank you, Stephen. And there's Mary Aline, and there's Greg again. And
I also want to publicly thank a donor, someone who, these people are humble enough, they don't want their name mentioned, but someone who made the donation to me, thank you very much also publicly. I said I will give a public thank you without mentioning a name, but you know who you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Cool. All right.
So, and also a complaint. LeBron James has been transferred to Philadelphia 76ers. Not a single question about LeBron. I thought we became partly a sports show in the World Cup, and now suddenly no questions on sports. That's disappointing.
I think they associate you with football, so we now have to build up your credentials around basketball. So
basketball is the number one thing. Football is below basketball.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron James has gone to Philadelphia. Jaylen Brown, the Celtics traded Jaylen Brown, which, I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me. Although they tell me that if you look at the Moneyball statistics, Jaylen Brown is not that good of a player. It doesn't make any sense to me. This is what I read, right? This is what the Celtics excuse. Not only did they trade him to Philadelphia, they traded him to Philadelphia, got nothing in return. They got Bob Kiss in return is the term. So I have no idea what the Celtics are thinking, what they're doing, why they did this. I mean, he's the player that had the most heart on that team, and worked hard. And anyway,
last time this team was full without injuries, they won the league. So
yes. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And he had his best year ever last year. So to trade him after the best year ever.
Best year ever, but the other best player was missing most of the season. So, yeah.
Yes. So, it doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, I mean, are you going to now predict that Philadelphia is going to win the Eastern Conference?
Well, it's not easy because there's the New York Knicks are on the East. Giannis is now in Miami, which is exciting. Giannis partnered with the best coach in the NBA. So it's going to be an exciting Eastern Conference. But I'm a LeBron fanboy. I'm going to jump on the Philadelphia bandwagon.
Okay, so you think LeBron still has legs?
Oh,
He
100%, 100%.
he still can really contribute to a team like Philadelphia.
He's still comfortably in the top 10 at 42 as he is, particularly now that he will be in a team that he doesn't have to do everything.
Yeah, I mean, he won't be the scorer. He doesn't have to be the lead scorer. He can be much more of a playmaker on this team. I mean, he's surrounded by three really good scorers. You know, a lot of it will depend on Embiid, what's his name, staying healthy. Right?
Yeah, Embiid not getting and finding a way to share the ball, because the usage both of LeBron and of Embiid and of Jaylen Brown and of Maxwell and of the guy who plays shooting. As we say, they're going to need the three different balls. But if they manage to figure this out, it's going to, at least it's going to be a very fun team to watch and an exciting project to watch.
Who's the coach? Because I think it's going to be important, right?
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, the guy who won it with Toronto, Nick Nolte is an actor.
But it is
anyway.
Nick. I can see his face. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy with the nerdy Canadian guy.
All right. Okay, so we got two $500 reviews to do.
Whoa.
Yeah, so one from Shazbot. I sent you emails with the name of the thing. Shazbot wants us to review the Rick and Morty season 2, episode 6. The Ricks must be crazy. You can find it streaming on something. If you can't find it, let me know. I'll find it for you. But
for $500, I'm gonna find it.
There you go. So this is Rick and Morty. So it's a comedy show from what, the 80s or the 90s? I don't remember. I never really watched it. So thank you, Shazbot. I'll check it out. I never really watched the show, so I don't know much about it. And then we have Michael, who says, can you react to the 2004 film Troy with Brad Pitt? Much better than the Odyssey, and there are a lot of themes about being a second-hander in the film.
Seriously, guys, you watched... So just think of Agamemnon. So you watched this Agamemnon, and you think the Agamemnon in 2004, who is like my drunk uncle from Crete, is superior. But we're gonna do the review. It's gonna be fun.
So we'll do the review instead of just reacting, Michael. We're gonna review it. My memory of the movie Troy is not great, partially because I don't think it's a great movie, so it didn't really leave much with me. Qua movie, as a movie, I have no doubt that the Odyssey is a better movie. But we'll wait for the actual review of Troy.
And any excuse to watch Brad Pitt again is welcome. All
right, I didn't know you had a crush on Brad Pitt, but okay, that's good.
Boy crush, no, man crush, unapologetically.
Yeah, I have it on Denzel Washington, so I'll pretty much watch anything Denzel Washington is in. I think Denzel is the best actor of his generation. But all right, let's see. West asked $100. Thank you, West.
Thank you.
Is JD Vance more or less dangerous than Trump because he actually has an ideology? Maybe he'll
said it all.
Maybe he'll be easier to counter politically. Also, I can't respect anyone who converts to Catholicism after the horrible scandals. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting about, you mentioned that, but in the dim hypothesis, Leonard Peikoff says, you know, the integrating principle of an authoritarian in the future will be religion, but it won't be Catholicism, he says, because nobody can overcome, no religion can ever overcome the scandals, you know, the pedophilia scandals that the Catholic Church suffered. And yet it hasn't stopped a big wave of people, particularly smart in intellectual, to converting to Catholicism. So I guess I wouldn't be so sure that the scandals would stop them. So what do you think, more or less dangerous than Trump?
more dangerous. So first of all, let me say a big thank you to the people who contributed before. We're going to spend a lot of time. We're going to watch the movies. We're going to do some research. We're going to come up with good reviews next week. And thanks to our friend also for his contribution. So these days, trying to understand JD Vance a bit better, I also dove a bit to the rabbit hole of Catholicism. And there is this book, Why We Are Catholics. There are some podcasts on Catholicism. I also researched a bit the material from Opus Dei. It's absolutely breathtaking how they can create a pretzel of reality and serve you a contradiction. And how they make it sound as if it's persuading, whereas it shouldn't be able to persuade a 12-year-old. Why am I mentioning this? If you see the moral acrobatics that JD Vance does when it comes to the Catholic school, the Catholic pedophilia scandals, he's actually telling you it's absolutely horrible, but also it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. Yeah. Now, notice, capitalism, which has taken humanity from the mud and elevated to the skyscrapers, some people in a quasi-capitalist country getting overdose is on capitalism. This systematic abuse that has going on for so long has nothing to do with Catholicism. So have no doubt that they're going to find a way, in the same way they can persuade you that, yeah, communion is that's the body and blood of Christ, but it is not the body of blood and Christ, but it is. In the same way, they're going to find you a way to persuade you that this is not the real Catholic Church. Now, comparison to Trump, the one big advantage that Trump has is that Trump is a political animal like no one else. He has a particular type of political charisma that JD Vance has not got. If he gets his way, though, if he finds himself in the White House, Vance is going to be way more dangerous because he's an ideologue. And he knows that Trump is not an ideologue. In a podcast, he says, it was a very funny moment, he says, I know many people think that Trump is this radical for capitalism, basically, but no, he's actually a radical pragmatist. This is the term Vance uses. Yeah. And I was thinking, is there a single person who thinks that Trump is this radical firebrand for capitalism? Because I haven't met any of these people. So if he finds his way in the White House, Vance is more dangerous.
Yeah, and I do think he's easier to defeat because, as Nikos said, he's not as a political animal as Trump is. I don't think he could forge the kind of coalition that Trump did. I think even though he says all these things about the working class, I don't think working class people will actually like him. There's a aloofness to him. He's a little condescending. It's like his sister. Who are you to tell me in the Appalachia? You're from here. I think a lot of working class people will treat him that way. He's not very charismatic at all. And so I really don't think he has a chance of winning unless the Democrats put up somebody so offensive that people will view JD Vance as just the less of two evils.
But whatever he's done till now, he has succeeded impressively.
Yes.
So
don't underestimate him. And he has strong allies in people like Trump's son. Trump's sons, I think, are big supporters of JD Vance, and people like Tucker Carlson, who have large audiences.
Mm-hmm. And again, he's building a coalition with the worst parts of the other side. So you don't know what will come out of this.
Yeah. Jennifer says, love you guys. Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Hunter says $100. Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you.
I'm certain Vance envies the Silicon Valley crowd he once surrounded himself with. He did not fit in, couldn't keep up, and hates them for it.
I don't get this at all. He did fit in. He is on big stages with these people in these closed conferences. And now he has more power than these people. It is... remember that line by Frank Underwood, like these people who just go for money, they're so naive. I've got the real power. So I think JD Vance now sees that he has the advantage over these people. So he probably sees it, I was on the same table with you, and now I am over you.
Yeah, Hunter continues, says he talks about the disdain elites have for working class. This is a pretext for retaliating against people who didn't like him. I think that's too much psychology, and I'm not sure there's evidence of that. Again, he was in Peter Thiel's inner circle, which would have put him at the table with the Palantir guys. I'm sure he's on pretty good terms with the guy who runs the University of Austin, the donor who funds the University of Austin, whose name slips my mind because he's co-founder of Palantir. Peter Thiel is a big shot. I think he's potentially in with Elon Musk, although it's hard to tell with Elon, where he's going. I'm not sure if he really, I mean, he might envy them, but he's also he's in with them and he will have control over them. So I don't know that this is all driven by some kind of psychology of envy or psychology of resentment or psychology of, I'm going to retaliate against them. Although, there might be elements of that. There might be that hillbilly attitude coming out of, I'm going to screw the rich.
And we're talking about the openly wannabe central planner. So he views everyone as a pawn. This is what central planners do.
All right, Christian, Chris, not Christian, Chris. Chris says, Yaron and Nikos, please go into more detail on Vance and his wife. How can he reconcile being married to an Indian-American woman with leading a party increasingly anti-immigrant and anti-non-white? Could altruism or Christian views on sex play a role?
So some very important context. He met her when he was an atheist.
Yeah.
She comes from a family of high achievers, and she herself was a high achiever. She landed some impressive jobs. From what I know from this world, that you can only land them through merit, like working with very important judges straight out of university. So she's a woman who has accomplished things, and she is the ultimate success story. And she's not an immigrant herself. She's not an immigrant. So and again, he met her at a completely different mindset and when he was a completely different person. And don't be surprised by people holding contradictions in your mind. If you believe there are demons out there, your whole life is going to be full of contradictions. There's no surprise there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's basically, think about it as compartmentalization. He can love his wife. We don't know that he does, but let's assume he does. And he can then feel it's his duty to lead the country. And yes, he has to deal with some racists and he has to deal with some people that he might disagree with, but he has to unite the country and he has to lead it. He has to lead the party. So be it. And he has to be nice to people who hate his wife. But the greater good is more important. This was where altruism, collectivism come in. The greater good of the country, the greater good of the party, the greater good of whatever. His desire for power is more important than the particulars of his marriage, if you will. So, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate this support. Shruti says, this show deserves all the support and patronage it gets, and then some. Thanks for keeping this running each week. Thanks, Shruti. We appreciate the support. Nathan. All right, Nathan has two questions. Why do communists tend to be opposed to religion, given that there is a lot of overlap between their philosophies? And the second question is, are socialists more willing to accept religion than communists? And if so, why?
First of all, with the exception of the Soviet Union, it's not even very accurate that communists were very hostile to church. In many countries, they cooperated with the church. I mean, they forced the church to cooperate. The rank and file communist does have some affinity to Christianity in terms of it is supposed to care about the poor. And their main problem with the church is its hypocrisy. that you tell us you support the poor and yet you don't support the poor. At some point, and also the famous quote by Marx, religion is the opium of the masses, is completely misunderstood. Marx does not mention it as disgusting. He's mostly saying it as a matter of fact that, yeah, religion is, people, they have horrible lives, so they find some solace in religion. And as time went by, religion and socialism, communism, I don't see a big difference between the two, came together. Think about liberation theology in Latin America. So I don't accept the premise that there is this militant difference between communism and religion. In Spain, last week we talked about the Spanish Civil War, very often the communists would save the priests from the hands of the anarchists. I mean, as they should, because the anarchists were doing horrible things to the priests. But don't have in your mind this, that everywhere and every time and forever the communists are against the church. They are against the church to the point where they still believed in enlightenment and they viewed themselves as modernity's number one spokesperson, and to the degree that they were fighting over, let's say, they were over disputed territory.
All right, good. Yeah, and there are lots of socialists who are religious.
Stalin, by the way, Stalin started from the church. He used church metaphors throughout his life. And compared to other groups, during his days, the church was not even among the top targets of his persecution. During Stalin days, because before that it was very seriously persecuted.
Yep. All right, Ryan says, in your view, what makes Vance a Christian? What does he do that suggests he believes in the teaching of Jesus Christ? I've not read his book.
Well, first of all, that he views himself as a Christian. He organizes his whole life story around Christianity. And he's telling us in his book that he plans to govern as a Christian. So what makes anyone a Christian? Like it's, it's not that they literally see Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, he goes to church. He talks the talk. So I agree with Nikos. I don't know what makes a Christian beyond that. He's not a Mother Teresa. So he's not that kind of a Christian, but not every Christian is going to be a Mother Teresa in a sense of leaving everything, going to help the poor. I don't think that's a requirement of Christianity. The Pope doesn't even do that.
And I gave examples from the book. Well, I think he's genuinely trying to be an altruist. Where he says, for example, I want to help the immigrants, but I don't want to destroy the country. So what do? I have to help them. Or when he turns to his wife, what if our boy goes to a very esteemed school and this is going to perpetuate privilege? That's altruism.
Yep. Ryan, if Catholic school teaching says that targeting civilians in war is wrong, why doesn't Vance publicly criticize Putin and defend Ukraine on this basis? Isn't he serious about his religion?
That's a very good question. Someone should ask him.
Yeah. I mean, Christians are constantly engaged in contradictions. Why do Christians go to war? Why do they kill non-Christians? Why did the Protestants kill Catholics and Catholics kill Protestants in mass, in huge numbers, unprecedented numbers? Why did they burn people at the stake? Why did they inflict Inquisition? Why did they kick out the Jews if they love their neighbor like themselves, why did they kick the Jews out of Spain? Christians are filled with contradictions. It doesn't mean that they don't believe in Catholic social teaching. They also have a vast body of work that explains the contradictions, that justifies all the horror that they have committed throughout the millennium. So, if you're trying to catch them but you believe this, you'll never win that one, because the Catholics actually have written about every single one of these things and explained it away or rationalized it in some way or another. You know, why doesn't he criticize the United States bombing the drug boats in the Caribbeans, or the killing of innocent people by ICE? I mean, he's not going to criticize any of that, partially because it's all being done for greater good. Right?
And again, anyone who thinks that Christians somewhere out there have good answers, do the experiment I did in the last couple of weeks. Go and find 2, 3. Ask ChatGPT, what are the best, most convincing sources on why would someone be a Catholic? Read these sources and realize that these wouldn't pass the scrutiny of a 12-year-old with some basic thinking. And so don't be surprised. How does this make sense? It is meant not to make sense.
Yes, and again, Catholic social teaching doesn't teach that targeting civilians in war is wrong. I don't know where it teaches that, because Catholics, in much of their history, have targeted civilians. So certain branches of Catholicism teach that, but it depends on the context and depends on whether you're doing a greater good or not doing a greater good.
Remember, people, in World War II, the Allies were bombing French civilians, knowingly that French civilians would die. Of course, they wanted to kill the Germans that were around, but this was considered normal. We don't live in times where you're supposed to give electricity and water and food to your enemy. These are very modern monsters.
So Ryan goes again. If Catholic social teaching says we are all one human family, regardless of nationality, why doesn't Vance speak out against ICE in its obvious abuse of serious Catholic? Yes, he's a serious Catholic. Again, what do you? I don't know what you expect. Why didn't the Pope speak up against child abuse, against pedophilia? That is horrific, according to supposedly social teaching. But you don't not become a Catholic because they don't meet your Ryan's definition of what it means to be a Catholic.
Watch last week's episode. Why do Catholics lionize Franco, who broke every single rule of war? Forget Catholic, every single common humanity rule of war, like that you don't bring Moroccan troops to rape women.
Yeah, and
or go see the comments. By the way, Yaron, did you see the comments we got in the Franco, the main video and the highlight you made?
No.
Absolutely disappointing how many people who I assume they are our audience, because otherwise why would they watch? Every possible excuse for Franco. Or they said that we are lying, we made up the Moroccan rape stories, where there's not a single historical source that doesn't mention this.
Yep. I think they're attracted to the video because it was about Franco, and they're not regular watchers, although could be some regular watchers, who knows. And the goal is to grow so big that we don't know who our viewers are.
Indeed.
Andrew, for Nikos, my take on clavicular, a playboy's vapid, insane journey to nothing. Looks maxing is absurd, but at 20, his contents, not particularly more debased than the usual tastes of our cultural youth in recent, where's the continuation? In recent Hannity and David Rubin interviews, beyond curiosity, far from judging the hedonism of the right, purportedly hates, they subtly admire him, linked to the weirdo right's superficial outside focus on aesthetics. Your take?
My take is that it's midnight and I got confused, but let me tell you what I got. By the way, I think Clavicular, as we speak, is on his way to Russia, because every person who wants to be edgy gets this mild, rotting idea of contrarianism, that everything I've been told is good is bad, and vice versa. Everyone tells Russia is bad, I'm going to go to Russia. So looks maxing has some element of aspiration in it, that I want to make some improvements in my life, some improvements on myself. So I recognize this noble root in it, but I don't know much about this person. I just know that this whole milieu is absolutely degenerate and decadent, even compared to its own standards. We did a whole episode with Yaron on the manosphere. Compare the manosphere of the 2005 with today. It is day and night. So I haven't followed closely Clavicular, but keep an eye on him. He's going to tell us probably how everything is cheaper in Russia, how the tube is cleaner. So he's walking on the steps of Tucker Carlson.
So he practices something called facial bone smashing.
Yeah, I think that's an urban myth. So,
This
you
is
know,
from, I don't know, Wikipedia.
so
Taking
this is
anabolic
used.
steroids and using crystal meth as an appetite suppressant. But you think that's all, we don't know, right?
No, maybe the meth thing, maybe it is true. I don't know. But the bone smashing thing, I've heard it's an urban myth. So this is to make your face more angular. The funny thing with Clavicular, if you see before and after photos, I think he looks more attractive before he started the looks maxing. But, and I'm saying this in a heterosexual way, but I don't know.
So do you think he's just doing plastic surgery? Is that what looks maxing is?
Looks maxing is you try to optimize in the same way that people try to optimize a lengthy life. They try to optimize looking good, but it almost has something very feminine in it. Like you know, you're obsessed with it. Something very shallow and superficial and narcissistic, and it's so weird when this gets intertwined with the manosphere, because there's something very traditionally non-masculine in it. I'll just say this.
Yeah. So Andrew says something about Hannity and David Rubin, that they seem to admire him in some way. You know, they criticize the hedonism, but on the left, but then when it's somebody on the right, they kind of I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just gonna say that
Any of those
this is a field I've been very, very wrong in the past. Circa 2020, I was disagreeing with Yaron, for example, on Andrew Tate. I thought, well, this is basically a good trend, you know, telling people be more ambitious. He's just a clone. And I was completely wrong. So, yeah, very often these people go down paths that other people predict, and I don't predict because I focus on, it's just self-development.
All right. It looks like there's a big New York Times article about Clavicular, so I'll have to check it out because hadn't heard anything about him. So yeah.
I think you have, because someone asked us on the Manosphere episode,
and I forgot already. So that's how much it stuck. All right, Richard. Thanks much. Good work. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
That. Mary Aline says, thanks to Nikos for reading Vance's undoubtedly dreadful book. Vance is so creepy. Also, please tell me what I should know about LeBron James, unless you already have.
What you should know is that he's legitimately in the discussion of being the best basketball player of all time. So whereas in football, I think there is no discussion, and people who put Ronaldo and Messi in the same sentence, it should be the last discussion you ever have with them about football. If someone puts LeBron and Michael Jordan in the same sentence, there is a discussion to be had. And this is the biggest compliment one can pay to LeBron. Something about the book. Again, JD, probably now he has a ghostwriter, but he's a good author.
Yeah.
There's a reason Billy Elegy became a bestseller. And I mean, I read this book in 2 days. It's not, and I didn't skip anything. It reads, you read it with interest. I mean, it is creepy at parts. It's very uncomfortable in other parts, but it is a page turner.
All right. Linda says, thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Chris, I asked you on this question a few weeks ago, but wanted to ask Nikos. Is Nikos an NFL fan? If so, then what does he think of Tom Brady's competing against and associating with internet provocateur Logan Paul? I find it very sad.
Yes, I've only watched one NFL Super Bowl. It was 2008, Eli Manning versus Tom Brady, and Eli Manning won. So it's too much of a set piece sport. I don't follow it. I cannot follow a sport that I'm not going to be an expert in. So I just follow basketball and football because I can understand them. I cannot follow sports I can't understand. Is Logan Paul now doing every single sport? Wasn't he doing boxing or something? I don't know. I've missed. But I like Tom Brady as a productiveness role model and the way he approached his work. And the same with Bill Belichick. And the same with that other coach who wrote the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, one of the best self-development books. Read it even if you don't follow American football.
So you have no opinion about Brady's, association with Logan Paul?
Zero opinion and zero knowledge, I'm afraid.
Any opinion or knowledge about Logan Paul as how bad is he?
I have no idea. Is he the guy who fought with Tyson?
I have no idea. I think so, but I don't know.
I've watched that fight. It was very underwhelming. And it looked a bit like it was almost agreed that it would be a tie or it would be decided on technical points. But the quick answer is I don't know.
All right, Andrew, I may have missed it if you covered what Vance said was the essence of what led him to reject atheism and adopt mysticism. Given the total context of what you know about him and his ideas, what do you think was the cause?
Yeah, actually, we didn't specifically answer that. At the cause, there is something which is understandable, where he said, I look around and I don't find meaning. That we live in times that are meaningless, that there is no moral framework, for example, in the economy. And he is right. Where he's wrong is that you can only find this in religion. He cannot imagine of a moral code outside of religion. So this is the main reason why he converted, that he gave birth to a boy and he said, I want to make this boy a virtuous man, but how can you do it without religion?
It's the same reason Einhorst Eli gave. It's the same reason they all give. They can't imagine morality and purpose and meaning outside of religion. And even though they read Ayn Rand, they don't get it from Ayn Rand. So they don't understand Ayn Rand. They don't dig deep enough. They don't integrate it enough. They don't really get it. And it keeps, you keep seeing the same phenomena with very smart people. I mean, these are smart people.
And remember, the most repeated thing in the book is judge them by their fruits or something like that. He puts it the way it is in the Bible. So this means we live in a culture which is decadent, and this came at the same time as the retreat of religion. Therefore, it has to be because of the retreat of religion.
All right, Jacob says, driving from St. Louis to Ventura in California, any recommendations for audiobooks? Started economics in one lesson, but I need another 8-hour book.
Okay, guys, be very careful. Audible books that are about non-fiction dry stuff, I've never come closer to falling asleep on drive inside the town. So don't have long drives with monotonous books. Prefer music. The best Audible book of all time is The Fountainhead, at least the European version. It has the best narrator ever. So if you haven't read The Fountainhead for some time, give it a chance. Also very enjoyable as Audible is the book by David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. So this is another recommendation, but be careful. It's very easy to fall asleep with audiobooks.
All right. I've never come close to falling asleep with audiobooks, but different people are going to respond differently. Jacob, is inflation preferable to progressive tax hikes, since it will put negative pressure on consumption rather than on tax hikes high income earners?
I leave this to you 100%.
I mean, I don't think inflation is a tax. So it's a consumption tax. In that sense, is it better than explicit tax hikes? No, because implicit taxes are always worse than explicit taxes. So because you can get away with them, and you don't point a finger at who's responsible. So hidden taxes are the worst kind of taxes. Inflation is the worst tax, and it legitimately makes it so that people who are struggling struggle much more. I mean, it's a very regressive tax in that way. So poor people suffer from inflation more than anybody else. So it's just a horrific tax that's under the table. It's hidden. People don't know what's going on. It's what leads to fear. That fear often leads to political change and political resentment. If you raise taxes, okay, everybody knows, everybody adjusts. My taxes used to be 28%. Now they're 35%. It sucks, but okay, I see, I can adjust to it. But what do you do with inflation? Inflation is just a killer. So no, inflation is about the worst thing you can do. Let's see.
Also, to remind people to give us ideas, we don't have agreed on a topic for next week, so any good ideas welcome.
All right, I like numbers says, can you give an example of a lefty for Vance? Of somebody on the left who is pro-Vance right now.
I can give the opposite example. Leftists that JD Vance appreciates. So my prediction is he's casting a net. We don't know. He's too toxic yet for this net to attract fish. Let's see what's going to happen in 2 years, because again, it matters a lot who is going to be on the Democrat. If it's going to be a freak, many blue-collar workers will feel closer culturally in any possible way, maybe to Vance than to their own party. I'm sure that the Democrats know this, so you expect that they will take it into accordance on their campaign.
We'll see, but you know, I think he's too toxic right now because he's associated with Trump, so no leftist is going to support him right now. But you know, watch how the left has responded to Tucker Carlson's announcement about his maybe third political party, particularly people like Senek. You know, the extreme left, anti-Israel left. They are responding to Tucker Carlson. JD Vance is just one notch away from Tucker Carlson. There's not that big of a difference.
No, actually, he's closer, maybe even. Actually, no, I'm not sure. Maybe you're right.
Chris, I want to know Nikos' favorite music. Details, please. And Yaron, did you say Don Watkins is a heavy metal fan? Yes, Don Watkins is a heavy metal fan. One of his very few flaws.
I listen to everything from communist anthems, pop, rock. It's absolutely crazy if you see my playlist. So, and I'm not an aficionado of music. I cannot appreciate good classical music. Most of the time I listen to jazz, but if I had to pick one thing, I would say 60s and 70s classic rock. Doors, Led Zeppelin, actually Doors, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, these are the top for me. Oh, and a lot of Greek stuff that you wouldn't know, guys.
Who do I know that's Greek? I know
lower quality, not things like Yannis or Miki Theodorakis or things like that.
All right.
But now I'm curious, who do you know who is Greek? You probably know Yanni because we've discussed him, but who else?
You know, when we were, I mean, there was a lot of Greek music in Israel. God, I can't remember his name. Yeah, I can't remember.
First experience in Israel, I get in the taxi, there's Greek music.
What's that?
First experience in Israel, I get an Uber or a taxi from the airport and there's Greek music in the car.
Yep. It's not unusual. All right, Chris, I never would like to be in the mind of JD Vance. It seems like a very dark place to be. I think it is.
And he's open about this. He's having all these destructive thoughts that all his happiness is going to be taken away, that a bear is going to attack his child, that a drunk driver is going to hit his family. So he has this radical vulnerability that makes it likable. And my prediction is when he's going to be on the central stage in politics, he's going to use some of that.
Michael, America is obsessed with religion, other mystical ideas. Has Rand brought anything to this country? Well, I mean, did she bring anything to you? Are you in this country, right? So, I mean, I don't know what it means, brought anything to this country. How many people have changed their lives because of Rand? She's brought a huge amount. Has she fundamentally changed the culture of America? No. Has she convinced millions of Americans not to be Christian and mystical and adopt reason? No. But I don't know what brought anything means. She's obviously brought something.
Think about it this way, guys. If it were not for Ayn Rand, we would be here today criticizing JD Vance using some Milton Friedman type of arguments that immigration is good for GDP. That would be the Nikos and Yaron show on this Saturday night. How he's wrong in terms of his projections on the economic impact of immigration.
Yeah. I mean, you never should ask a question about, has Rand brought anything to, has Rand brought anything to your life? That's the only question that matters in the end of the day.
No, wait, I think it also matters why her cultural impact is not where it should be, and this is on us. So this is a legitimate question, I think.
Well, it's a legitimate question in the sense of why aren't there enough people that have taken Ayn Rand's idea seriously? You know, we could have a discussion about why that is, but I just find, has she brought anything to this country? I mean, you change one mind at a time. There's no way to do it any other way. And the question is, has she changed minds? Yes. Not enough to change the culture. Okay. Then the question is why? And that's where maybe it's on us that we haven't done our job. I like Number says, didn't Catholic punish home worship in the 1500s?
Home worship or Homer worship?
Home worshiping at home. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, religion was supposed to be something you did communally. Worshiping was something you did communally and needed to be in a church. So yeah, I think that's part of the Protestant rebellion against the Catholics.
I'm laughing because YouTube algorithm has realized that I'm trying to understand more about Catholicism, and they're sending me all these videos. Apparently, there's a trend that now you can have something like a temple in your house. So there are videos how to turn your closet into a Catholic praying room. So, and JD Vance, I think, is having a room which is like he says he's having a mass at home, though I might be wrong here.
All right. Just Pioki says, Nikos, do you happen to know how Tick is doing? He went to an Objectivist conference and just disappeared online after. And
well,
any sign he will be back?
Well, he didn't disappear like that. He released a video, then he released an update on how he's doing. I spoke to him when I changed jobs because I thought, you know, I should tell him he's alive and he's recovering. I hope he will be back because first of all, I miss him as a YouTube voice. And yeah, he's on the way back. Let's put it this way. That's the last thing I knew about him.
All right. Enric, is there a path for Marco Rubio to become the next US president? Sure. I mean, JD Vance is not particularly popular. You know, the Marco Rubio might decide to run against him. He might have to resign from government to do that. I don't know. I don't think that's crazy to believe that that would happen. And then it would be dependent on primary voters. And I don't know. To the extent that MAGA will dominate the primaries, JD Vance has an advantage. To the extent that other Republicans that are fed up with Trump come out and vote, they will probably vote for somebody like Marco Rubio. So I think there's a chance, but I don't know. It's hard to call it at this point.
And remember that infamous, disgusting, shameful White House meeting with Zelensky. While JD Vance was doing his thing, Marco Rubio was just sitting there. And at the end, he tweeted, "Thank you, Mr. President, for putting America's interest first. I'm never going to forget that, and I will not forgive him for that." Obviously, I prefer him to JD Vance. But again, some things show your character and some things are a red flag.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's sold his soul. I mean, he really has sold his soul. Keith, please consider shows on George Sorel and Oswald Spengler, both often ignored yet hugely influential to evils of left and right for over a century.
Well, we can put these shows in the agenda for October, November, because this requires loads of work, particularly Spengler. His books have catchy titles. You think it's going to be a fun reading. It's very heavy stuff. We could do something about the intellectual predecessors to fascism, the intellectual things that they were not fascists themselves, but paved the way for fascism, and in Germany for National Socialism, for example, about the folkish culture. We could do these things.
All right. Raphael says, Rand said romantic art presents man as he might be or ought to be. But if we project ourselves through the ideal like Galt, don't we always end up falling short of our own expectations?
Good question. I'll leave it to you.
I mean, I think it depends on what you take Galt to be, right? You're not as smart as Galt, right? So it can't be that you're filtering it through his creating a modo or his intellectual achievements. You have to project him as an ideal, as a moral character. And there's no reason that you have to fall short as Galt as a moral character. Again, you're not going to be an engineer like him or a scientist like him or any particular like him. So the idea of art is not to project any particulars about the man, but the principle behind him, the principle behind the ideal, and to strive towards that. So it's not I'm falling short. It's I've still got work to do, which is a very different attitude. You know, you can take the attitude of I can't make it, so I'm not going to try, or say, yeah, I'm moving in that direction, and there's still work to do, and I'm still doing that work. And it pays off, right? So it's not work as sacrifice or work as burden. All right. Ryan, how about Che Guevara, Castro, Cuban Revolution for Nikos and Yaron show? Thanks, guys. Love all shows. Also, maybe Mao, his Little Red Book, Founding of Current Taiwan.
Yeah, look, Fidel Castro is so fascinating. I'm not sure how much interest there would be. If Yaron is okay with it, we can do something about it. Mao's Red Book is just quotes that the recipients are illiterate peasants, literally. This is who the quotes are written for. So it's at the level of what?
And we do something on Mao and communism in China. I think a lot of people don't know the story.
Okay, do you want to settle on this for next week?
Sure, we can do Mao next week.
Yeah, but up to the point of Mao's death, so not including Deng Xiaoping, because this includes extra research that I can't do at the moment. Okay, Mao and yeah, there's gonna be a lot of freaky stuff. It's
so the history of his coming to power, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah,
all of that.
I'll just give this as a trailer. Whatever you think happened, it's 10 times worse.
Yep.
I had the student. I'll mention that in one of my ARU classes, there was a guy who, if you saw him, you'd never expect that this guy would get emotional publicly during a lecture. there was a guy who was in tears on the class, and I didn't even try. It's just that the monstrosity and the stuff that happened go beyond the things that you imagine as human tragedy or whatever. And it's something that it's alien to most people. You've all heard about the Holocaust, but you've no idea what the Great Leap Forward was, or even worse, the Cultural Revolution was, although it cost fewer lives. Anyway, next Sunday.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Ryan, for the ideas. Andrew, topic idea for next week: an analysis of 20th century historical events involved in Iran's transition from civilized society to theocracy.
Iranian Revolution episode requires more work. It cannot be next week. It will be one of the shows.
Yeah, we should do, if we do that, we'll do kind of Iranian 20th century history all the way through the revolution. But yes, part of the plan is to do that at some point. Yep.
Yeah, but it requires a lot of work.
Okay, Mary Eileen, does Josh Shapiro have a shot at the White House? I wish. I really don't think so. He's Jewish. I don't think a Jew can win in the Democratic primaries right now. He's pro-Israel. I don't think somebody explicitly pro-Israel can win. He's too centrist. So I just don't see who his constituency is in the primary.
But that gives us an excellent thought experiment. Josh Shapiro versus JD Vance. I'm sure there are many people in the left who are going to vote for JD Vance between the two.
I think that's right.
Related to our friend who previously said, can you think of a leftist who would vote for JD Vance? Against Josh Shapiro, yes.
And luckily, there'll be quite a few Republicans who might vote for Josh Shapiro.
Oh, yeah, that also, yeah.
Okay, Gail says, Yaron, have you seen the hero Western film Open Range with Robert Duvall? I did see the movie Open Range a long time ago, I think when it first came out in the early 2000s, and it's a good movie. I don't remember the details. I remember really liking it without remembering any of the details of why I really liked it. That's the problem of my fading memory. So yes, I saw it. I liked it. I love Westerns. Westerns are one of my favorite genres. There are not a lot of good modern Westerns. Most modern Westerns suck because they adopt the anti-hero. Almost all Westerns since spaghetti Westerns suck. And those of you who think spaghetti Westerns are the pinnacle of Westerns, oh my God. That's worse than thinking Ronaldo's better than Messi.
Okay, please, someone give us the opportunity to debate this with Yaron, because my favorite Westerns are in order the three main spaghetti Westerns.
Spaghetti Westerns. They are not great. They're undermining of the very nature of the Western. I've got a whole talk on it. I did, 30 years ago, I think, 40 years ago. I did a whole talk on this, why spaghetti Westerns basically undermine the values of the Western, of the traditional Western. Anyway, so yes.
But I never understood why, for example, in For a Few Dollars More, Clint Eastwood is an anti-hero. To me, he's clearly a hero, and he has the attributes of hero. The same in For a Fistful of Dollars. Remember how he saves Marisol?
Character in The Fistful of Dollars.
Sorry?
What's the name of the character in The Fistful of Dollars?
He has no name.
Yes, exactly. And that's all you have to know to understand. He's an empty shell. He's a nothing. He's not an individuated human being. He's a gunslinger out to seek revenge or seek something, right? So one day, okay, we'll do this debate. But the fact that he has no name is a big part of what undercuts the whole notion of spaghetti Westerns. Didn't they make these, Italians made these funny spaghetti Westerns with My Name is Nobody?
But that's also not funny. I mean, I remember watching it as a kid many times, because we had this blockbuster type video club and they had only a few Westerns, and the ones I would watch them time and again. Anyway, this requires a whole a whole discussion. Particularly for Sergio Leone, I disagree. I think Clint Eastwood, at least for me growing up, it was the first ideal of a hero that I could absorb growing up.
All right, we'll have to have that debate at some point. So if somebody wants to sponsor a debate between me and Nikos on spaghetti westerns versus westerns, let's do it. That'll be fun. All right. There's a bunch of topics like this that Nikos and I disagree on that would be fun to debate. Andrew, why is Hassan Piker full of hatred of the good?
You could ask this about
All
50
haters of the
million
good.
people. But particularly with Hassan Piker, it's weird. He's a guy who has everything going on for him. He looks spectacularly good, at least for a leftist. He's clever. He's articulate. He's successful. I don't know, I cannot psychologize, so I don't have the material to give an answer to this question.
So is there a different standard of good looking for leftists and people on the right?
Yes, with leftists, the expectations are very low.
Really? Why? Because of the hippie kind of association?
Yeah, I mean, how...
I don't know. Brad Pitt is a leftist, so it's hard for me to say.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go to a leftist protest, which, by the way, was not the case in Greece. In Greece, you'd have, like, in the first line, the Communist Party would put the construction workers or the steward teams, which was basically like the militia. It would be impressive human beings in terms of, they'd be strong, maybe with some beer belly, but this is useful for a street fight. So you wouldn't have this hippie soy boy archetype.
Right. I never associated, maybe because in Israel, socialists were not hippies. So I never associated necessarily with, and I don't find, this goes back to our disagreement about the aesthetics of clothes. I don't find, rightists who wear three-piece suits and slick their hair back and have this perfect look. I find it offensive so
Do you find Clark Gable offensive?
Clark Gable for his time was great. If I saw somebody dressed and looked like Clark Gable today, I would have no interest. And this is my problem with the general manager of the Miami Heat.
It's too late to spike my adrenaline and to spike my cortisol, so I won't comment on that.
Although we are now in pretty much the same time zone, so I don't have the advantage I used to have in terms of being as much fresher. All right, guys, thank you. You guys, the super chatters. More coming in. All right, last one. Raphael says, can art change the psychoepistemology of a culture, or does something deeper need to happen? That's a really good question, an important question. I think the answer is yes, but it's not enough. That is, it can start to change. So if you think about the Renaissance, something deeper was happening, i.e., Aristotle brought into the culture. But you can't get an enlightenment without the artistic achievements of the Renaissance. So art is an essential piece of changing the psychoepistemology of a culture. I don't think it can do it alone. There has to be something, in terms of ideas, philosophically also changing. And the art, in many respects, the art is better than the ideas, right? The art of the Renaissance is better than any ideas that the people had during the Renaissance. So it has to go hand in hand. And in that sense, I think cultural change for objectivism is only going to happen when we start producing artists who can actually portray and do to the Renaissance for Aristotle, for Ayn Rand, what the Renaissance did for Aristotle.
Yeah, and just think of the years 2012 to 2016. Within these years, to 2014, we've had The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Whiplash, the most violent year. If you focused on this, you would expect that what would come later would be, finally, hero worship, productive worship. What came after was Trump, and pick woke. So
Yeah, and you can't take 4 good movies out of, I mean, there's a context. So a
Yeah.
vast majority of the stuff is junk. I mean, the stunning thing about the Renaissance, when you go to a place like Florence, is how many good artists there are painting at the same time. So even the second-rate guys are good, right? And the whole culture is infused with it. Whereas here you have a few, exceptional, even those directors could not keep it up, right? Even those directors could not sustain the quality that they achieved during that period. I go back to the 1980s and James Cameron's movies in the 1980s. I mean, these are great movies with heroes. Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, and Abyss. I mean, these were really, and then he makes Titanic, and he sinks his entire philosophy with the Titanic.
what's wrong with Titanic?
Titanic is a horrible movie.
Well, maybe, but philosophically, why?
Oh, philosophically, it's close to the most explicitly Marxist movie I know. Visually, there's this amazing scene visually, right, in the Titanic where he does a shot through like the cross section of the Titanic, right, and it makes a pyramid. It literally visually makes a pyramid, and at the top are the rich financiers lounging around, and then you get kind of the rich, and then you get the middle class in their cabins, and then you get the poor people in their cabins, like the miserable poor, and then at the bottom, which is incredibly powerful, right? So it's well done, right? Are the guys shoveling the coal into the fire to make this whole thing work? It's the best visualization of Marxist pyramid of exploitation I've ever seen. But there's so many things like that. Like there's this spoiled rich girl, and she meets this worldly poor kid, and he's supposed to make her. So what does he teach her? What's the thing that he teaches the girl to do that is going to make her a better human being?
Huh.
He
You
teaches
should
her
have this discussion with Zizek. He has exactly the same take as you on that.
he teaches her how to spit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's disgusting. The whole movie is disgusting. It's a horrible take, rich versus poor, and the whole articulation of it. And by the end, you're kind of begging for him to die already. And DiCaprio and the fake romanticism of them at the edge of the boat with the sweeping music. It's all, he's manipulating you at that point. There's nothing between them. There's nothing admirable about the kid. It's just not, there's nothing convincing about it. But yeah, it's philosophically really, really, really bad. Versus his early movies, which are philosophically, not politically. The politics he doesn't, because the politics is about AI taking over the world. But the theme of Terminator 2 is free will, and it's pretty explicit in a way that I don't know any other movie that is so explicit about, I can change the future. My destiny is in my control in a way that you don't get anywhere else.
Didn't Cameron also make Avatar?
Yes, that's the following.
That's even worse. Yeah, that's going from the old left to the new environmentalist left, so it's even worse.
Exactly. And that's his arc. His arc is going more political and going more towards the modern left. Okay, Raphael says it's all Raphael's fault. All right, about psychoepistemology. Can we say a more emotional mind tends to appreciate fragmented art, a concrete bound mind, naturalism, and a conceptual mind, romanticism? God, that's a tough one. I'm not sure exactly what an emotional mind is. That's a non-mind, if you will. It tends to appreciate fragmented art. Yeah, I don't know.
Empirically, there's something to it, maybe, but
A concrete bound mind and naturalism. I mean, there's definitely that. Naturalism appeals to the concrete bound, and romanticism appeals to a more abstract and conceptual mind. I think that's true. I'm not sure about emotion versus fragmented, and I'm not sure what the difference is between emotional and concrete bound. at the end of the day, they're both, in terms of minds, they're both, yeah, I mean, I'd have to think about it. I'd have to think about it. But I don't think of a mind as emotional. So, all right. Thanks, Rafael. All right, Nikos, it's late.
It's late. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Yaron.
See you guys next week. Thanks to all the super chatters. Thanks to the sticker people. And see you. I don't know if next week is Saturday or Sunday. I guess we'll get back to you. I think it's Sunday, but I'm just not sure.
Better. One extra day of prep is important. It's a difficult topic. China.
Good. We're doing Mao's China. Bye, everybody. Good night. All right. I know how to turn this off.